We're going to talk about the simulated reality and this crazy universe we all seem to be occupying at the same time. So I got a couple articles about this. And the first one I'm going to bring up on screen, please, is a headline that says, if we live in a simulation, how much computer memory does it need?
Oh, we just discussed this before the show. You can tell them all about computer memory.
I ran out of computer memory. I ran out of some RAM, and my computer was messing up last week, if everyone remembers. We weren't streaming to all the locations we normally would because I ran out of memory. So if we're living a simulation, what do we need? Well, storing a simulation of the universe is likely to require more memory than the average video game. Well, no shit. What kind of statement is that for like a leadoff? You know, this comes from Live Science.
I've never heard of Live Science.
You never heard of Live Science? Live Science, good. They got the best science over there.
Apparently, based on the one sentence you've read me,
yeah,
I would say no.
Okay, well, what if we told you that the world could live? I'm sorry. What if we told you that the world you live in isn't real? It might sound like a concept straight out of the Keanu Reeves science fiction favorite, The Matrix, but according to some of the world's most important top minds, that idea that we are living inside a sophisticated computer simulation is not only possible, it may actually be more likely than the idea that we are living in the real world. But like all computer programs, such a complex simulation, which would presumably include the entire observable universe, would have to be stored somewhere. Intrigued by the possibility, physicist Melvin Vopson from the University of Portsmouth has sought to calculate just how much computer memory the entire universe would actually require. To do this, he started by first determining how much information there is in a single subatomic particle, then multiplied this by the estimate for the total number of particles in the universe. This calculation comes to a rather ridiculous 10 to the 93rd power of bits, or 6 million trillion needed to store the entire universe in computer memory. Well, I'm going to pause right there. He is saying that, according to this calculation, he's saying every subatomic particle is rendered simultaneously. And I'm not sure if that's true. He's making all these calculations like, well, everything is rendered at the same time, so therefore we need that much memory. When I think the universe, if it is a simulation, it gets rendered on demand. And that demand is the conscious, observable mind, like us. It gets rendered when us, the observer, is looking at it. Beyond that, it's not consuming all that much memory.
So that's one of the primary ways that developers who do develop video games, when they're working on that, they save on the amount of memory overhead necessary, because they only render out the world that's visible in the field of view from the point of view of the player character, which was why one of the things you could do in some of the older, the Grand Theft Auto games, if you drove backwards but looked forwards, the world hadn't rendered behind you, so there was no traffic.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. So you're right. It would seem odd to say that every particle is rendered as its own bit, presumably, and thus using that number, which is specious to start with anyway, is how they arrived at umpteen quadrillion, whatever it was, Brazilians of memory necessary. Bill Gates already said you only ever need 640K.
That's what he said. That was, I think he may have changed his mind since then. But the 600 million trillion pieces of memory needed to render the universe. I mean, I don't have that much. I only have 600 million trillion megabytes of RAM. So
you need to get more memory today.
I'm a little low on my memory for even my own personal computing needs.
So do you select what gets turned off in the universe? You're just like, you know what? South America, I don't really care about you right now.
Yeah, so I appreciate the approach here. I just don't think he thought it through all the way. He's assuming everything's an active memory, which I don't think that it is. So I'll continue on here. Of course, if we are living in a computer simulation, it is likely to be one created by a much more advanced civilization, or even our future selves, meaning that such levels of computer storage might not be particularly excessive or unreachable. As things stand, it's a bit like trying to imagine how the latest big budget video game, which can exceed 100 gigabytes in size, could be stored in the memory of an old 1980s 8-bit home computer.
Baby.
That doesn't make any... What the hell kind of reference was that?
So I think it's like they're trying to create an analogy. They're saying we are like the old 1980s 8-bit home computer, and we are trying to imagine what it would be like to try to run a modern video game on the platforms we have. And we can't understand it. We can't understand using 100 gigabytes just for a game.
Well, but
using an 8-bit computer.
He's mixing metaphors of memory and storage, and
yes.
memory and addressable storage versus now processing power.
Yes, exactly.
This is like who Ted Stevens. It's a series of tubes. It's like some of these analogies don't work when you fundamentally get it wrong to start with. Bandwidth, maximum throughput, and bandwidth are different things. You can't just say it's tubes. Let's add another tube. So this guy's saying, well, if your Nintendo in 1986 had a trillion bits of memory, it could run all them. No, it couldn't. So
these computers, I tell you, they just get crazier and crazier.
I agree, Alex. So
my Nintendo plays Sega games. My Nintendo plays Atari games. How does that not work? I thought it worked. I bought a computer. It's all compatible. Well, I just think that this calculation that they did was they're just not thinking through. I understand like the exercise that they tried to do here, and it's like, oh my God, this computer that we're running in is completely crazy. But like we're talking about like active memory versus what's observable, and there's a philosophical element to the simulated reality that they're ignoring.
He's mixing RAM and ROM, active storage and accessible memory. And it's just like, and then processing power. So I see there are some comments there. What are the first couple comments? Are they calling this guy out and being just like a goon?
I will read the comments because I love comments. So. The first comment here. Here's my cynical post that contributes little to what I consider is an aimless thread based loosely on a superficial article that makes a barely litter attempt to narrate some of the irrelevant speculations about an ill-considered notion derived from multiple hypothetical concepts. But it taps into a fundamental uneasiness about ourselves, our fates, and actual reality of our existence. Presumably, this simulation we're in is coded well enough that we can't ever prove or disprove it's there. Logically, the aliens who designed us might also be Sims, unaware that there's someone else's computer. Okay, so
good call, Tom 1200, for calling out this guy on his specious and spurious argument to start with, and then pointing out that it's probably much bigger than that.
So post 20 here says it might take less memory than that, as there is another version of this simulated theory where the only things being processed is what is being observed, interacted with, while the rest is just background simulation for a very large and even that. Wow, so this is not written very well, but that's what we're talking about. Like only the observed universe is being rendered at that particular time, and it's not even, some of it's not even being rendered completely well, and there might be things that are missing. And I brought this up like when it comes to flat versus round, it could be rendered round. That's what it's programmed to be rendered, but it actually might be flat to a certain degree in certain areas, depending on who is observing it and where they are observing this, and how much processing power is demanded at that point in time. So, fascinating conversation. But
what you basically just described right there is compression. That's how compression works. Is you eliminate information that's not necessary for the fundamental
Yeah.
transmission of said information, reducing colors or reducing depth. And yeah, you could do that. If you take a photo of a 3-dimensional space, your brain fills in the gaps to tell you how it's 3-dimensional and how the rest of it looks and how it was all interacting. So you could do the same thing in this sort of thing in the simulation. Do I need a simulation of Venus? If there's physically nobody on Venus, let's just start with that. If there's nobody on Venus, do we need to fully render Venus? Or can we just no, there's a freaking thing in the sky.
Just put some clouds there. It's easier to render.
Yeah, and when any probe gets in there, you just melt it.
Yeah, just put some blobs there, blobs of white clouds. We don't got to render any mountains. If they happen to get a probe in there, fine, we'll render some dirt for them or some shit. But beyond that, they ain't getting anything. Here's another article related to the simulated reality. And this one's titled, Could Our Universe Be an Alien Science Experiment? And this comes from Scientific American. Oh, yes, the Scientific American. So we have
the Scientific American.
The one and only Scientific American. So we have Live Science doing the simulated reality, and we got Scientific American doing the alien experiment. And these are all coming out within like 2 to 3 weeks of each other. So.
These are all written by the same guy.
I don't know. You can look it up.
Well, you're getting all these through an aggregator, right? Yeah.
I am an aggregator, but I'll read this here a little bit. So scientists have speculated over the possibility that our entire universe may have been created in a laboratory. There is so much we don't understand about the universe and the nature of existence that even attempting to comprehend how anything actually exists at all is enough to make your head hurt. While the currently accepted model for the birth of the universe is the Big Bang, we still don't know much of anything about what was around before that or what triggered the expansion in the first place. Could the universe be caught in an endless cycle of expansion and contraction? Is our universe one of a multitude of other universes in the overarching multiverse? We just don't know. In a recent article, Harvard University astronomer Alvy Loeb put forward another possibility, one that doesn't exactly help to explain the nature of reality, but certainly makes for an interesting thought exercise. What if the universe was actually created by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization or beings in a laboratory? For this to be true, of course, there would need to be some other universe of which our universe is a part of, or a part to which it is connected, one which these alien scientists live and work. It is also likely that if this were true, they would have created numerous other universes in the same way. But this all begs a question: how did their universe come about? Rather than solving the question of the origin of our universe, it simply regresses the problem and necessitates the even more complex answer.
Why wouldn't they just use the same one? If our universe is created by the Big Bang, and then someone says, but maybe our universe is a simulation inside another universe, well, why isn't that one just created by the Big Bang? I mean, why they got
it is similar to the common atheist argument concerning the existence of God. If God made our universe, who made God? At the end of the day, the same question remains unanswered.
The creature.
The creature.
We were created by the creature and or the goblin.
The goblin.
And I've been listening to it.
I do just want to point out real quick that TV show Big Bang Theory, which I'm still proud to say I've never seen, has ruined all of my searches for images related to the Big Bang.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yes, it is.
Well, it just seems like they're kind of stumbling here a little bit. I like that they're asking these questions, but it seems like they're really limiting the scope of their thought here. Like if it the previous article, if it is a simulation and we're living in some sort of computer generated reality, well then hypothetically there's some sort of API we can tap into. And let's just go down that route. Like it is a simulation. It's a very advanced simulation, one which we all feel is real. And the more you feel it, your emotions are real. You are real. I know a lot of people don't like this simulated reality theory because they think everything is fake and it turns into some exercise in nihilism where nothing's real, so I can do anything I want. Well, I take the opposite approach where even if it is simulated, you feel as though it is real. And your emotions do have a real impact on your emotional well-being and what you feel and say to the people around you.
Well, if this is a simulated universe inside another universe, and we are part of that simulation, wouldn't our simulated and created consciousnesses thus assume that anything we pick up is real and would be part of that? Why would that be different? Why would we be outside of the matrix if we're in the matrix, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think there are, this universe, our section of the observable universe is powered by our own brains. And there's different processing powers. You can say, this hypothetically, our brain is part of the simulation. This part of the simulation is running off of the containers, in our brain. And it's fairly advanced. Let's just say it is an i9 processor with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Meanwhile, little bugs, they're like a Raspberry Pi. They can do stuff and but they're not observing as much of the universe as we are at one time. And so it's how modern day computer infrastructure is deployed through containers and all these virtual environments. Ours is the same way. We have all these different virtualized environments, some with more processing power than others. And that's exactly how we render this universe, is through our observations. And I think there's some sort of API that you can tap into by using prayer or ritual. Some people use blood sacrifice. It's probably a quick and easy and dirty way to do it, but you got to deal with the consequences. And then you have things like, how do you explain paranormal activity, like ghosts? Maybe that's a zombie process where it was a process like we all are, and it got killed off, but the computer simulation didn't take it out. So it's this continuing, it's zombie process in the background, which we say, oh my God, it's a specter. It's a spirit. No, it's just a zombie process that hasn't been cleared out of the system yet. You got to kill that PID. It hasn't been killed by the main processing system, or the main process. The main
Wasn't that
thread.
one of the conceits of the world of Tron? Is that there were programs that had been running that had been removed from the system, but were still running and functionally were ghosts.
Yeah, something like that. I don't think it's that far-fetched. I like that they're touching on these things, but I don't think they're going deep enough. They're really just scratching the surface when science talks about this kind of stuff or UFOs. They're really just kind of scratching the surface. And as soon as they start to get to some interesting philosophical questions, they kind of pull back a little bit. And they don't want to go too far. There's a theory each black hole that is out there in our universe actually kicks off a new universe. If you could go through that black hole and live, you would wind up in a new universe. That's a theory. I don't know how you can prove that. Maybe through some kind of mathematical theorem or something. I don't know, but that's one theory.
Or just
going
through a black hole.
You just go in there and just find out.
Yes. Just yell back what you saw.
Yeah.
Give us an email at ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. Check out obdmpod.com for all the social media and donation links. Be a part of the magic.